My own art practice, I really worked to combine kind of an AI research and an art practice into kind of a single dialogue technique. In my training, as was mentioned in my bio, my PhD is in computer science from Carnegie Mellon, but I also studied in the MFA program at Carnegie Mellon, and the work I was doing as a PhD student was to really try to rethink AI research practice as a medium. What would it mean to say that what AI is about is not the attempt to recreate the human, to model human intelligence or anything like that, but it's actually a expressive form for creating kind of deeply responsive and generative work. And that's really the goal of the Expressive Intelligence Studio, is to create these kind of compelling new forms of interactive art and entertainment that use AI techniques to achieve a degree of kind of responsiveness and generativity that you just can't achieve otherwise. To give a couple of examples, a piece that Andrew Stern and I released in 2005 is called Facade. Facade was a kind of a form of experimental game, I guess you could call it, in which the player engages this couple, Grace and Tripp, from a first-person perspective in the course of kind of a 20-minute interaction. And what happens is, at least the first time you play, you show up at the door, you knock on the door, you've been invited over for drinks, that's all you've been told. Unbeknownst to you, Grace and Tripp's marriage is in serious trouble. And in fact, tonight's night, it's all going to explode. And sort of how it explodes and how they feel about each other and about you depends on how you interact with them in the course of that 20 minutes. And it's designed that you have to sort of replay it in order to truly understand the social dynamic operating there. From sort of an artificial intelligence perspective, you can communicate with the characters in unrestricted natural language, there's sort of natural language parsing and automated semantics and models of emotion and models of dramaturgy and so on that are all running behind the scenes to kind of create this experience and this illusion of interacting with this couple at this moment of crisis. As an example of a very different kind of piece, Tableau Machine, which is been released or shown in various guises over the last couple of years, is a generative art installation designed for placement in a home. So a Tableau Machine screen is actually that little teeny screen, sort of LCD display you see above the fireplace. It's actually like a 45-inch screen. But what this is was it was an experiment in creating a sort of algorithmically generative artist, and pieces like that have been around for a long time. Aaron, being probably the most famous, Cohen's Aaron. But what always sort of struck me about a lot of this algorithmically generative visual art is that these systems were kind of creating visual responses in a vacuum. They don't have senses, they're not engaged in a context, they're sort of like brains in vats that just kind of randomly spit out visual work. And so I was interested in, well, what would it mean to give a system like this eyes? And to place it specifically in a home environment. And so there's actually a distributed machine vision system with cameras sort of placed strategically throughout the home that's sort of watching activity and tracking variables such as the amount of sort of raw energy in the space, the amount of raw movement, the amount of clumpiness. Is a sort of energy distributed because people are in separate rooms or a bunch of people together in one place. Things like flow. Is the sort of configuration of kind of energy intensity in the home relatively stable right now, or are we in some transition to a new activity? And then based on pulling out that kind of information from the machine vision system, the sort of machine artist is basically responding to the situation by kind of constantly and kind of in a slow ambient way recreating generated imagery. It's interesting because in a computer science context, people tend to think, oh, you're doing information visualization. And it's like, no, it's not supposed to be information visualization. It is a system with its own form of kind of machinic subjectivity, and I'll put square quotes around subjectivity, that really is kind of an alien presence responding to behavior in the home. As part of, so we've shown this in galleries, but it was never really intended for gallery installation. It's really intended for these domestic spaces. So we've also installed it for a period of several months in a number of homes with a number of families, and then done sort of ethnographic studies where we go in and sort of interview the family, look at multiple times every week how is their sort of relationship to the piece changing? Are they sort of ignoring over time? What kind of stories are they telling about it? How is it being incorporated into family life or not? And so it was really this experiment, kind of this long-term kind of AI quasi-companion living in the home and then responding to this domestic space.
That's your 5-minute warning too.
All right, thank you. So I think I will finish up by saying, so all of these pieces are collaborative, pretty much everything I made. Facade took 5 years to make, and there were sort of 2 main people involved, and sort of 4 or 5 other people. Tableau Machine took about 3 years, Terminal Time, and earlier piece I made took about 3 years. So these are big collaborative productions, but in doing this kind of work, code itself is the medium. Highly contingent execution of a process is the medium. And there sometimes tends to be a vibe in technology-based artwork or computer-based artwork in particular, where the computer is kind of viewed as this sort of support tool. And going back to Sean's, your guys' presentation, there's this sense sometimes where the computation is viewed as like this tool that I'm going to use instrumentally to accomplish a conceptual end, and I don't care about how it works or how it operates, right? And this actually, for this kind of work, actually does violence to any ability to actually collaborate. Procedural literacy, I would argue that computational media, and I'll make that distinction versus digital media, not a focus on data, but a focus on code. Computational media really requires a deep appreciation and understanding of complex executing contingent processes. This doesn't mean everyone has to be a computer scientist, but rather literacy in thinking about procedural representation. And I would say sort of deep dialogue and collaboration on this kind of work can only happen when there's that shared procedural literacy. Otherwise, one side or the other is going to reduce to being instrumental. You'll either have the artist reducing the sort of code artist to a code monkey, who's like, implement my brand conception, or the coder will reduce the artist to kind of a design monkey who's going to pretty up my demo, right? And these are the 2 sort of abuses of this kind of collaboration that occur without sort of a shared ground of procedural literacy to have real dialogue. That's it.